Let's be honest. In one way or another, everyone's a freak. No two bodies are ever truly alike. We all possess awkward, bewildering, and remarkable traits. We're all unique. But for centuries, the word freak has been tossed around to label those born with rare conditions or those capable of performing extreme feats by contorting or manipulating their bodies. Freak shows became a wildly popular form of fun during the Victorian era, when crowds from every class gathered to see these so-called freaks. And in this video, we're going to show you exactly that. So let's begin this list with number 15, Lewis Wilkins. They called him the Oklahoma Giant, but Lewis was from St. Paul, born in 1869, and built like no one else. At his peak, he stood 8 feet 2 inches tall, weighed over 360 pounds, and wore custom shoes the size of a small child. In group photographs, he didn't just tower over people, he overshadowed them. His waist was 58 inches, and his presence alone stopped strangers cold. He became known as the Wacomi's Giant after a short stint in Oklahoma, where promoters shaped his backstory to fit the crowd. Like many giants of the era, Wilkins had few options. His body became his livelihood, and the circus offered him a place where staring didn't turn cruel. He died young, only 33 years old, in Chicago in 1902. There are no books or articles, just a handful of grainy images. But even with so little recorded, he left a mark that didn't need applause. Number 14, Lulu Hurst. In the early 1880s, Lulu wasn't just a circus curiosity, she was a sensation. Billed as the Georgia Wonder, she'd step on stage, joke with the crowd, and then do the impossible. Chairs shook, canes bent, umbrellas spun from her fingertips, all while full-grown men struggled to stay balanced. She claimed her powers came during a lightning storm at 14, when her hands began releasing strange energy. Some believed the tale. Others saw the act for what it was: clever physics, redirection, and flawless timing. But either way, theaters filled from Georgia to New York. At 16, she walked away without a farewell tour or scandal. Years later, in her biography, she explained the truth. Technique, not mysticism. But even in honesty, her talent remained. Lulu knew how to hold an audience without ever shouting. She married her manager, slipped out of the spotlight, and died in 1950. The name Lulu stayed for someone unforgettable. Number 13, the Korean Twins. Well, everyone called them the Korean Twins, but they were Chinese. Liu Tang-sen and Liu Sang-sen were born in Nanjing around 1886. The two were joined at the chest by a thin strip of flesh, flexible enough that they could run, twist, and turn to face each other without trouble. One preferred wine more than the other, but they both felt its rush. They spoke fluent English and could walk separately, though they enjoyed moving in rhythm. Their mother once attempted to separate them, tying off the connection, but stopped when one suddenly drained pale. She died when they was 2. Their father stepped in and put them on stage. From local fairs in Hangzhou to shows across Europe and the US, they toured non-stop. American immigration laws barred Chinese entry, so they were marketed as Korean. Around 1905, they went back to China, married, had children, and lived quietly until money dried up. They returned to performing in their 60s. In 1957, doctors separated them. One twin died, but the other lived. Number 12, Roy Bard and Orpha Ensign. Roy's body hardened into stone, but his spirit never followed. He grew up in Ohio, strung telephone lines, and lived an ordinary life until his joints began to ossify. By 28, he couldn't move at all. Lying flat, stiff as a plank, he joined Ripley's auditorium, billed as rigid as a rock. He joked about it, saying, "Believe it or not, I'm super-duper happy." People believed him. In the same show toured Orpha Ensign, a blind woman with the same ossified condition. Ripley described her as hard as stone, soft in heart. She even ran a hotel in Florida between tours. Then came Dolly Reagan, the ossified girl, paralyzed by muscular dystrophy and ankylosis. By 14, she couldn't walk, yet she worked, traveled, and even married 3 times. Her final act billed her as half lady, half baby, her torso grown, her lower half frozen small. Dolly performed for decades, sharp-minded and self-reliant, until her death in 1994. Number 11. The three-legged guy. For years, Francesco felt nature had played a cruel joke on him. He had 3 legs, 4 feet, and even 2 sets of genitals, because a partially absorbed twin had fused into his lower back and pelvis. Surgery wasn't possible. Everything was too intertwined. Growing up in Sicily, he despised his own body. That changed after time in a home for disabled children. Some couldn't walk, others couldn't see. Lentini stopped viewing himself as cursed. He turned his body into craft. He kicked soccer balls with his 3rd leg, jumped rope using all 3 feet, and performed with absolute control, turning bizarre anatomy into balance and grace. He joined major circuses, toured endlessly, and never leaned on pity. People arrived to gawk but stayed for his humor and confidence. He married, had children, and performed until his final days. Lentini wasn't known because he was strange. He was remembered because he made peace with what set him apart. Number 10. Agnes Schmidt. Agnes didn't rely on wild costumes or exaggerated theatrics like others. She simply stood before the crowd and let her body tell its own truth. Her legs, especially her thighs, carried long, soft folds of skin that draped and rippled like fabric. Some observers whispered the word elephant, while others stared in quiet disbelief. During the 1930s, she became a regular in Ripley's Believe It or Not under the name the Rubber-Skinned Woman. Though she spent part of her early life in Milwaukee, the road eventually became her home. Crowds didn't quite know where to place her, amazed, confused, unsettled, but Agnes never flinched. She posed with a calm expression, held her ground, and offered herself with an honesty many performers never reached. She wasn't a headliner, and she never became a household name, but people remembered her. What she gave was rare. Strangeness without mockery, vulnerability without apology. Agnes didn't ask for pity or applause. She simply let the audience see her, exactly as she was. Number 9. Medusa Van Allen. She was born with a body that never grew beyond infancy, except for her head. Her condition left her entirely dependent on others for movement, yet her mind never lagged behind. Raised in Ohio and taught by a private tutor, she became known as Medusa on 1930s sideshow circuits. The name didn't reflect her nature. She wasn't cold or severe. She was insightful, witty, and disarmingly aware. Her body resembled a doll's, but her voice belonged to a full-grown woman. In her pitch books, she wrote, "I enjoy life like anyone else. I wouldn't trade places with an average girl." And she meant it. She never walked, never stood, yet she never pitied herself, because she had no reason to. She passed away in 1943 while touring with A.J. Budd's Freaks on Parade, shortly after returning from an illness. Her body stayed small, but not her presence. Number 8. Kiko and Sulu. They were billed as the pinheads from Zanzibar, but nothing about Kiko and Sulu's lives was that simple or pleasant. Their real names were never revealed. What we do know is that they had microcephaly, a condition that affects skull and brain development. What the public viewed as odd, promoters turned into income, selling postcards, staging fake rituals, and piling on exotic stories to shape their act. Sometimes they were Kiko and Sulu, other times Zib and Izit. Either way, they were props in someone else's fantasy of what Zanzibar meant. They performed with Ringling Brothers in the 1920s and 1930s, and like many with their condition, they were boxed into the same role, dressed in robes, heads shaved, made to dance or grin when told. Whether they ever saw home again is unknown. What remains are the photos, frozen smiles under circus lights. Nobody talks about what followed after the tent moved on, but their story, like many, isn't about where they were from. It's about how others exploited their difference. Number 7. Francis Trovilot. In 1598, crowds poured into a Paris hall to see a man with a horn growing from his forehead. His name was Francis Trovilot, a quiet, rugged man raised among charcoal workers near Mézières. As a boy, a small swelling formed at the center of his head, and by his mid-30s, it had hardened into something astonishing, a ram-like horn curling backward toward his skull. Its weight tugged at his scalp, forcing him to trim it to avoid bleeding. Doctors, philosophers, and thrill-seekers came to touch it, debating whether it formed from skin or bone. Fabritius, a surgeon who examined him, wrote that it was as solid as ivory. Francis wasn't talkative, but he endured everything, being prodded, stared at, and marched through Paris, then into Orleans, where he died soon after. His story survived because no one had ever witnessed anything like it. A man with a horn, wandering a world built to stare and sneer. All right, now, let's move to Number 6. Lwando Baldwin. He never let anything slow him down. Not height, not limbs, not expectations. He stood just 3 feet tall and had no arms, yet he built a performing job that lasted for years. He wasn't merely a curiosity. He became known for incredible memory feats. Crowds watched him recite long passages, solve calculations, and outsmart volunteers with mental challenges. He often dressed as a military figure, calling himself captain or professor, depending on the show. He could light a cigar with his feet, pour tea, even sign autographs with his toes. Posters labeled him the armless wonder, but in person, audiences saw someone sharp, humorous, and fearless. He married and toured across the country in the 1890s, earning respect far beyond the stage. Promoters loved exaggeration, but with Baldwin, they didn't have to. People stared, sure, but not only because of how he looked. It was how he handled what life gave him that truly kept their attention. Number 5. Max Bornstein. He stood just 4 feet 4, but in the early 1950s, Max Bornstein had a presence that loomed across the candy world. Hired by the Hollywood Candy Company, Max became the real-life mascot for the Zero Bar, a silver-wrapped caramel treat. He toured the country in a candy-striped suit, driving a custom-painted Crosley Supersports, handing out free Zero bars to swarms of kids. They called him Mr. Zero, and the name stuck. He brought that persona to ABC's Hollywood Junior Circus, starring as a main act on Saturday mornings. Offstage, Max lived in St. Louis and worked as a taxi driver. He married twice, first to Hilda Schuckman, who passed shortly after, and later to Minnie Novason. He didn't need flashy tricks. A smile, a tiny car, and a fistful of candy made him unforgettable to thousands. Max passed in 1996, but for countless kids of the 50s, he was the guy who made a street corner feel like a magic show. Number 4. Miss Houghton. She never had hands, but you'd never know it from watching her. In Coventry, people spoke about Miss Houghton like she was a myth, how she could write letters, sew fabric, and snip delicate paper circles for pocket watches, all with her toes. She didn't ask for applause or sympathy. She just worked, calm, precise, and incredibly focused, shaping lace and ink with feet more graceful than most hands. Crowds traveled across England to see her in action, often leaving with a piece of her work. A tiny watch paper, delicately folded, something real to prove what they'd seen. She'd smile, pick up a pen between her toes, and begin writing her name like it was second nature. Houghton's demonstrations weren't sideshow stunts. They were a lesson in adaptation when there's no alternative. Toward the end, her joints stiffened, her pace slowed, and her performances grew rarer. But what she left behind were stories that didn't just challenge disbelief, they rewrote it entirely. Number 3. Clementine Delay. Clementine turned her beard into a business. Living in Lorraine, near the German-Swiss border, she spent years privately shaving her face. That changed around 1900 after seeing a carnival bearded lady and saying without flinching, "I could grow a better one." And she did. Clementine and her husband renamed their café Le Café de la Femme à Barbe, printing her bearded face on postcards they sold at the counter. She toured across Europe but stayed rooted in France, where she controlled how she was seen. She performed in cabarets, circuses, and museums, but famously declined U.S. offers. In 1934, she published her memoirs. She never let the word freak define her. She shaped it, stylized it, sold it. Though she never reached Annie Jones's fame, Clementine carved out her own lane, part performer, part entrepreneur, and entirely her own. Her beard wasn't a gimmick, it was her trademark, proof that spectacle can belong to the one who owns it. Number 2. Len and Ernie Defort. Well, now this one is completely amazing. Ernie Defort was born with a parasitic twin attached to his chest, a body with no head, but with working arms, kidneys, and an extra liver. Doctors called it a medical marvel. The public called it a spectacle. The smaller body, nicknamed Len, moved faintly as Ernie grew, the two inseparable in both flesh and emotion. They toured as two boys with one head through Canadian sideshows. Crowds came, stared, left. But Ernie never treated Len like something shameful. At 12, the extra weight began to threaten his life. Doctors advised separation, a risky operation for the time. The surgery worked, but when Ernie woke up, the quiet beside him shattered him. He hadn't just lost flesh, he'd lost a companion. He recovered, but never spoke of the operation again. He lived on, quieter, intact, but carrying a grief medicine couldn't explain. It wasn't just science, it was brotherhood. A bond beyond biology, beyond logic, something only Ernie ever truly understood. Number 1. Haji Ali. There were no trapdoors or illusions, just a man, standing alone, doing things that shouldn't have been physically possible. Ali's act didn't need suspense, it erupted instantly. First, he drank kerosene. Then he spat it out in a roaring flame, then water, which he used to extinguish it just as calmly. He wasn't flashy, he barely spoke. But when he swallowed live fish and brought them back up, alive, wriggling, the air inside the tent tightened. People didn't know whether to applaud or run. Some found it revolting, others couldn't stop retelling it. Scientists tried to examine him, Hollywood hired him, and audiences packed theaters simply to watch one man break biological rules. No persona, no costume, no invented backstory, just total control. He didn't fit the standard freak show formula. He made his own category. One man, one body, doing the impossible without uttering a word. And in the long, strange history of sideshows, almost no one managed to match him. If you've enjoyed watching this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.